Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Average Joe's Sports Talk Saturday morning recap show. Caleb Brooks, Corey Labounty, both Starkey here with you to recap the final week of the regular season of the 2023 AHSAA football year. We've been talking about it. It's coming. It's coming. We're about to get to the postseason. We're here now. We know all the matchups after the results of last night. Still waiting on some decisions from the AHSAA on some teams on their eligibility for the postseason that could shake some things up. But otherwise, we've got it all figured out and ready to get things going. Before we get started, I want to thank the Henry House for their sponsorship with us. In 1893, the Henry House, nationally registered historic Victorian home, was born from one of Alabama's wealthiest families. After a top-to-bottom facelift by Little Pink House's construction, this is the go-to luxury spot beside the city harbor on Lake Guntersville. Perfect for a staycation, weekend getaway, and a Moats of North Alabama moke ride around beautiful Lake Guntersville. We offer whole property rental for weddings or your special events, and we also rent our 5 beautiful in-suites by the night individually for those romantic occasions. Make sure to scan the barcode right there on your screen, and you can find out more about the Henry House, Little Pink House Construction, Rojo Go, all the different places that sponsor with us right here with Average Joe Sports Talk. We couldn't be here each and every week with Road to the Blue Map, our Saturday morning recap show, without these great sponsors. And so we appreciate them supporting us, allowing us to support high school athletics right here all throughout the state of Alabama. And so, guys, before we get going here, Corey, tell us a little bit about your 2 games that you had Thursday night and then last night as well, and kind of what you thought about those 2 games.
Yeah, Thursday night, had an opportunity to see Sidney Lanier come down here and play at Viger High School, and Viger looking for their 7th win of the year. They were able to secure that and finish up the regular season 7-3. And with them being 7-3, Lanier is that school that is closing. They didn't even have an incoming freshman class. So there's only 350 kids walking that hallway of that school, and not having an incoming freshman class, participating in 6A, that's unheard of. And only 33 kids, the Coach Fagan, they found a way to get into the playoffs despite the loss to Viger. They're going to play Benjamin Russell. So kudos to that program that came into existence in the early 1900s that will be closing its doors after this year. And then going to last night, Blunt and Murphy, Maddie T. Blunt and Murphy, first 2-year head coaches, were on the sidelines. Murphy was able to get a couple of wins this year. Blunt was able to get their 2nd win this year. So 2 historic programs, name-wise, didn't have a winning season, but were able to get back on the winning track. Maddie T. Blunt, that is. So that brings us to the playoffs, Caleb.
Yeah, getting geared up for everything. And then, Bo, you went to Fife and Sylvania on Thursday night. Talk a little bit about that matchup and really what you saw from Fife. I was kind of shocked with how it kind of went, honestly, after seeing, Sylvania handle Geraldine earlier in the year. But we know Pisgah ended up beating Sylvania. And so just kind of what did you see from that game on Thursday?
You said it best Tuesday, Caleb. You can't go off these so-and-so beat so-and-so, so so-and-so should beat so-and-so. Yeah, none of that means nothing when you get on the field. It's about the matchups on the field at that time. And what I've seen from Fife, or what I have seen from Fife since week 1, is improvement each and every week, especially up front on the offensive line. It seemed like in the Geraldine game, it seemed like Anderson was about 60% and the offensive line was in disarray, so to speak. Well, now he's, plugged and played and moved guys around. Now they're a cohesive unit. You can see it. They look like the Fife of old. Maybe not as good as what you've seen from the guys on the 2020 team, but that's one of the greatest groups to ever come through there that ended up winning 51 in a row or whatever. But they've definitely gotten better. And Anderson now looks to be about 90% because that dude's incredible. If he's not the best back in 2A, I promise you he's in the conversation. And they've gotten better defensively each and every week. Look at the points. Well, I mean, they played Geraldine when they lost to them that week 1. They held them to 125 yards. Geraldine took advantage of some short fields, and that's what ultimately won that game for them. But in this situation, they're starting to drive the ball. They're playing better defense. Their offensive line's cohesive. Now it's becoming playoff time and colder weather, and that's when those guys step up. And then last night, I was at Fort Payne, Cherokee County. You know, Cherokee County's #2 team in the state in 4A and was previously undefeated. And Fort Payne came in and really just won the game outright. It wasn't like a fluke or something. You know, Fort Payne played really physical up front. That was a question coming in. And, you know, Fort Payne, can they stop the physicality of Cherokee County? Because they seem to have struggled with that throughout the season. But people's got to realize there's a big difference between 6A and 4A, first of all.
Yeah.
Especially from a depth standpoint. When Jacob Cornejo gets tackled on 3 straight tackles, well, he's got to flip around and play defense. Where the Fort Payne guys roll off and they go sit down and rest, and then they come back out. Big difference in numbers there. And but, you know, making no excuses or anything, Fort Payne won the game outright. They played really physical. Varner Dorr does what he does. You know, I think he's at 2,400 yards passing coming into the game with 22 touchdowns and only 2 picks on the year. So he's taking care of the football. He's having a fantastic year. And these are 2 playoff teams that should make pretty deep playoff runs. And it was a great time for football here in Northeast Alabama.
Yeah, it also kind of feels like Fort Payne's starting to figure out their defense here at the right time.
Yes, absolutely. They look like a different team, Caleb, than what we've seen earlier in the year when they were giving up chunks to like Scottsboro. They gave up 50. To Gadsden City, they gave up 60. But they definitely, as the years went on, and Bennett Blanks, you know, he made the North-South All-Star team. So kudos to him. He's got several offers to play college as well as Tinker as well. So they've gotten better defensively.
James Burns comments, good morning, guys. Good morning to you out there, James. And, hey, if you're tuned in, let us know where you were last night. You know, tell us what game you were at. And
hey, I can tell you where James Burns was. His son's a kicker at Coosa. He is one of the best kickers in the state. He's good from 50 yards and in, and he's about a 45-yard punter per average.
Yeah, well, he's got a fun one to look forward to this coming week.
That'll be a good one. Spring Garden and Coosa is going to be a good one.
That's correct. It's going to be their what? That's their fourth. It'll be their 4th matchup in 2 years.
That's correct.
Next Friday. So
that's like you know, Corey and I on Madden. I go at him 2 times a year. I get beat. I tuck my tail and I run. Then the next year, I get in my 2 games and then I tuck my tail and I run.
We're getting things started with our Thursday scores. This one, a big win, Corey, for Baker. They come all the way up to Birmingham, and they take care of Mountain Brook. And this is a Mountain Brook team. They've really struggled here at the end playing defense. You know, giving up 42 to a Gardendale team that really struggled on Thursday night to score against Hueytown and couldn't get anything going offensively. And now 37 here to Baker. But do you feel like Baker's starting to kind of get things going with Josh Flowers here at the right time heading into the postseason?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he had over 400 all-purpose yards in that game versus Mountain Brook. And what you hate to see for Mountain Brook is those devastating injuries going into the playoffs. That's what all coaches want to stay away from. And talking to Coach Steve Norman last night, Mountain Brook had a player to have a torn ACL, possibly a broken foot. So that's not what you want to see out of your starters in the last regular season game. But Baker was absolutely embarrassed by Mountain Brook 1 year ago when Mountain Brook came down here and played Baker en route to making that trip to the state championship game versus Saraland. But Baker found a way to score some 20 unanswered points in the second half, and they're bottling up that mojo. And for the first time in a long time, they're going to host a first-round game in 7A, which is something that they've never done before.
Yeah, and they'll be matching up with Dothan, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've already played each other this year, right?
Well, here it is with Baker. They're going to have Auburn. Auburn at Baker. Auburn. So, yeah, the Tigers will be coming down here. And, you know, Auburn last year, again, playing in the state championship game. So the schedule that Coach Norman set up for this Baker team was not one of cupcakes because he did play Dothan. He's turned around now. He's played Mountain Brook. He already played MGM. He's already played Foley within his region. So those type games get you prepared for what you're about to see in the first round. And the Hornets are trying to make history there and get a first-round win in the 7A playoffs.
Buckhorn gets a win over Grissom. I think that was their first winning season now, or first non-losing season since 2015. So very good for Coach Patterson and his group there at Buckhorn getting that win on Thursday night. And then, Bo, Collinsville 27, Valley Head 22. Great game up there that, had to really prepare both these teams for a playoff run coming up.
It is kind of a head scratcher coming in. On paper, people would think, man, that Collinsville should win this one. They're rolling. The only two losses was to Fife and Pisgah, and Valley Head is not had the same record as they had this point last year. Last year at this time, Valley Head was undefeated, ranked number 2 or 3 in 1A at this point last year. Rolled into Collinsville, got upset. This year, Collinsville was a favorite in that game. But anytime you go to Valley Head, it's hard to win football games. I mean, it's just a very hard place to win football games. They play really hard at home. If you listen to opposing fans, they say, "Oh, they got some home cooking going on up there." Whatever the case may be, I don't talk about officials at all because I actually promote officials because I think that's the right thing to do. But what I will tell you, they're hard to beat at home. So Collinsville went up there, took a pretty big lead, and then Valley Head just closed it in, and Collinsville hung on and got out of there with the skin of their teeth. And after watching Coach Ernie Willingham and I play in that golf tournament last weekend together, he's got to keep coaching. I don't think the PGA Tour is in his future anytime soon.
Corey, Cottage Hill over St. Luke last night. Is Cottage Hill in the postseason or
no? Cottage Hill, their season will end. It's against one of their rivalries. And congratulations to the Warriors for getting that second win of the season and ending it on a good note. And you hate to see it come to an end for so many student athletes, their last time ever, because a lot of these young men and young ladies will never play another lick of junior college or college ball. And that's what's so tough when you come and get to this end of the road, seeing those kids take off those uniforms for the last time in high school.
No, definitely so, and hopefully they can get back to being where they were a couple of years ago in football here in the future down there. Dothan over Jag last night. Kind of a disappointing season, I think, for Jag, and hopefully with all this movement in Montgomery, they can kind of get things figured out there because that's a place that so much history there at Jeff Davis, which is now Jag, and you'd love to see them kind of get back going and get back to being, competing for championships like we saw from that school at one time. And then Bo, you talked about Fife Sylvania the other night. That Fife defense is going to be tough for anybody in 2A. I'd love to see that matchup Fife and Locust Fork. I mean, that's kind of the matchup I'm looking forward to the most, and I think it would happen in round 2 or round 3. So, really looking forward to seeing how that goes. Hate it for Coach Ryan Locke. Tough loss last night. They were kind of, it's a tough matchup when you're taking on Gordo, and Gordo's just such a power over there on that side of the state, and so. Tough matchup for them, a tough way to end their year last night in the regular season with a loss there. And so looking at some of the other matchups from Thursday night around the state, Hueytown over Gardendale. I had that game on the AHSAA TV network. I'll be honest, and it's not a knock on either of these teams. Neither one of them was very impressive Thursday night. A lot of mistakes and Gardendale's defense isn't great. I mean, Hueytown started with the football in Gardendale territory 8 times that night.
Ooh.
8 times, starting with it on their side of the 50. And early in the game, I mean, they had only given up 2 touchdowns out of 5 times, and then it just kind of got away from them in the second half, and Gardendale scored some late to make it look a little better. But Coach Eads got a young group. He's a really good football coach there at Gardendale, and I know that they're going to be back to being really good again next year when you look at his group. He's got a quarterback who can really sling it. They just need some other weapons to step up around him and make some plays. Huntsville over Hazel Green. Tough year for Hazel Green. I don't understand really the deal at Hazel Green. And my brother coaches at Hazel Green. He kind of can't figure it out either. I mean, they can win in boys basketball, girls basketball. Softball's obviously really good. They're really good at baseball up there. Volleyball program's really good. And yet they just can't seem to figure it out from a football standpoint. I mean, their only successful year was the one year really that Smitty Grider was up there and they hosted a playoff game, and he left and went to Dothan the next year. So I can't figure out what the deal is at Hazel Green. They go 0-10 and just was not a great year for them. Jackson, who a lot of people feel like is a favorite in 4A, they really dominated Davidson, Corey, 45-14. And talk a little bit about what you know about this Jackson team and what kind of noise they can make in 4A going into the year, especially beating a team like Davidson last night.
Really, really, really good. I mean, you look at them taking on Theodore in the spring game. Of course, Theodore being that big-time 6A program, and Jackson said, we don't care how big you are. Landon Duckworth is the sensational sophomore quarterback, already verbally committed to South Carolina. And then you look at what they have coming in, a freshman running back already has Power 5 looks and offers, and you have 2 dynamic wide receivers. Jackson could compete at the 6A and 7A level with the type of talent that they have on their roster. They're just going to try to get over that hump and make it to the state championship game to pull it in front of the entire state of Alabama, so the entire state of Alabama can see what all the rumbling is about going up on 43.
Bo, Leeds 22, Center Point 0 last night. Not sure if maybe Center Point sat a couple of guys or just kind of had the game get away from them, but definitely not what we were expecting when we looked at that matchup during the week this week.
Yeah, no, that was one where you thought that game would be a very close game, a 4-quarter game. And I don't know if they have injuries over there, but again, that was a very interesting matchup because you knew going into that game, you got 2 teams that love to run the football and 2 teams that can play very good defense. So I expected a lower scoring game like that. But I don't know what's happened to Center Point down the stretch here, man. They've been struggling to score points if you look at their previous few games. And I can tell you right now, it's not from lack of coaching. You know that as well as I do. They've got one of the best head coaches, and I'm not even going to argue the sharpest dressed head coach in the state of Alabama, and George Bates. But that's a tough loss for them.
Yeah.
From the standpoint is when you go into these playoffs, you don't want a momentum breaker, and that's exactly what that was. That's a deflating loss. You don't want those kind of losses to go in, but it is. These coaches get paid to turn situations like this around to something positive. Maybe it gets the guys to listen a little more in the film room. Maybe it gets some of the leaders on their team in these locker rooms to step up and chew some dudes out and get people back on board and winning football games like they have. Because, at one point this season, they're 7-1 and it was rolling. Now these last few weeks, they seem to have fallen off and they haven't been scoring points. So it's got to be a concern for Center Point heading into these playoffs.
Corey, Leroy 49, Washington County 14. Just tell us about the Leroy team, and can they go get it done again?
Golden Bears, and Coach Massey does a great job with Leroy. It's one of those small-town communities that you see everybody come out and support the Leroy Bears, and they're going to show up and show out, and if they do make it to Tuscaloosa, Caleb, yes, I do expect them. They are one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win the state championship again. Another undefeated season. When you have kids playing both ways and understand the culture and are used to playing both ways this late in the season, Leroy's just had an outstanding season.
Mumford gets the win over Asheville last night. They had a good end of the year there, Bo. Mortimer Jordan over Fultondale 14-13. That was a tight game. Fultondale has to be they have to feel good about how they played, that Mortimer Jordan team, who really got off to a good start this year, and it's kind of, I don't know if they've had some injuries and stuff, but they're not scoring points at the clip they were early in the season.
Caleb, I hate saying this on the air. They may have had some guys they shouldn't be playing. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And they've had to set them guys.
All right.
From my understanding, they had 9 transfers in the offseason. I don't know this to be fact. I'm just going by hearsay, but they've had to sit those guys. And that's, when they all played against Etowah, that they beat Etowah as bad as they did. But from word on the street is they've had to sit 7 of those guys. So that's when you're seeing what you're seeing. But to make the playoffs for Fultondale, considering they're coming off a 1-19 run there in 2 years, that's just big for them.
No, definitely is. And then New Hope over Plainview last night. It was a tough year for Plainview this year.
Yeah.
They were in a lot. I mean, you go look at their losses, they didn't really ever get blown out. They were in all the games for the most part. They just kind of never were able to find a way to win any of these close games this year.
That's right. And as I said many weeks ago, it shows that Jimmy's and Joe's matter. You got a SEC head coach on that roster coaching. You have a national championship defensive coordinator on that roster coaching. And it's what you just said. You can obviously see the improvements there. They didn't get blown out by anybody, and they were in just about every game. But at the end of the day, sometimes it comes down to Jimmy's and Joe's. And if you don't have I'm not saying they don't have good players there. They may not have as many as a Geraldine or Sylvania or a Fife or somebody. You know what I mean? So that does play into it. It's facts. I mean, it is what it is. But what I like to see out of teams is improvement. And I think beyond a shadow of a doubt, they've improved. each and every game and this whole year.
Caleb, something real quick.
Yeah.
When you asked about Leroy, very unusual circumstance to where their head coach got deployed in October, the end of October. So not very often do you see a state championship caliber team have their head coach deployed to serve our country and then turn around and continue the finish the journey and the mission, and for that team to win a state championship possibly without their head coach who is serving the country. That's all the more reason that you would love to see Leroy bring back that blue map, not only for their head coach, but dealing with that type of adversity anytime you lose someone to the situation that he is being called up to serve our country. Kudos to them, especially as we approach Veterans Day as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's a good
That
point.
is awesome. Yeah. I didn't know that either. That's awesome.
That'd be a really good story there at the end of the year if it happens as well. And they seem to have the group to go do it. I mean, they're pretty good. So looking forward to seeing how it goes. Hey, we see all you guys tuning in on Facebook. Let us know where you were last night. Tell us what games you were at, what games piqued your interest, and what you saw at your game. So give us a comment. Tell us what game you attended last night and what stood out to you at the games that you attended as well. Looking at some more scores from Thursday night, and we'll be getting into Friday scores after this slide right here. But Russell County and Greenville, they play a shootout basketball game, 75-43 there on Thursday night. Spain Park over Pelham, they seem to have things rolling right now, Bo. Coach Fakakis, they're starting to peak, I think, at the right time. And next year, I think Spain Park's going to be a very dangerous team in that region up there in Coach Fakakis' third year.
Yeah, and I'm just going to be honest with you, Caleb. There's turmoil, so to speak, right down the road from Hoover.
Yeah.
You don't know if some of those kids are going to say, hey, you know what? These guys on the rise, let's go here. You don't know. I'm just saying, I think losing a 5-star halfway through the season, well, 2/3 of the way through the season has united them. Honestly, I think it probably made some guys angry. It probably made some guys want to play a little bit harder to prove we don't need one player just to win games, and all that works in Fakakis' favor. And if you don't think the mindset and the product on the field has changed since the first day that man walked in to now, go rewind the clock when he was at JO and look what he did.
Yeah.
Slow, steady, kept all his athletes there. And at Spain Park, he's fixing to do the same. And it's obvious that this team is on the rise in 7A Region 3.
Yeah, going to be fun to watch that and seeing them get back. I mean, it is a place they've played for a state championship there.
Oh, yeah. With John Gross.
Yeah,
John Gross was there.
Back in the back. I mean,
Hey, Caleb, Fakakis on a personal level as well. Yeah. Who don't want to play for a dude like that?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
He's one of those guys. He talks to you for 5 minutes. You're ready to go. You're ready to go get in a fist fight with somebody.
He's a motivator. There's no. I would love to be in the locker room for one of his.
Oh, dude.
I mean, I'm sure.
I don't know if we could put it on the air, but I'd like to be in there.
Thomasville over Clark County. They'll host Dadeville next week. They take care of business against a good Clark County team. It's been a weird year for Clark County, Corey. They're 5-0 in their region, but then they lost all 5 of their non-region games. But they went and tested themselves. So you got to give them credit for that. And how much do you feel like that can really prepare them for a playoff run now?
It's huge when you start looking at the preparation. We mentioned Steve Norman and the Baker Hornets playing those great non-region contests also to get you ready for the playoffs. At the end of the day, you can be a sub-500 team going into the playoffs because of where your non-region schedule takes you. That allows you to hoist that blue map at the end of the year. You'll take those losses because there's only a few teams that are going to have perfection at the end of the year. But give me imperfection on the record standpoint along with that ring and that blue map. But you're absolutely right. Clark County is tested, and Thomasville, that was a good win for Thomasville, but Clark County is not scared to play with the big dogs.
Yeah, and you got to give Thomasville some credit, too. I mean, they get that loss to Mobile Christian last week and to bounce back and perform really well last night, not let that Mobile Christian loss affect them, another week. That shows some maturity, I think, on their part. And Dadeville's going to have their work cut out for them heading down there to Thomasville next week to open up postseason. Corey, UMS Wright 20, Williamson 19. That got UMS Wright into the postseason. If everything stays the same, they're going to be traveling up to Central Clay County, and you'll have the 2 winningest coaches in AHSAA history playing against each other. But tell us a little bit about this game. It's a Williamson team that hasn't been great this season, and UMS obviously struggled. Was it some of the pressure of getting into the postseason that maybe mounted up in this game, or I mean, just tell us a little bit about this UMS group.
Well, I just, you call a spade in some situations, and special teams is that third phase of the game that often goes overlooked. Anytime you have a special teams extra point or, field goal attempt blocked or a punt blocked, that sometimes becomes the difference. And that was ultimately the difference maker with this UMS Wright Williamson game. Kudos to UMS Wright. Knowing that their backs were against the wall, they did find a way to win it. They had to have a long drive. Williamson, they needed to stop them. They could not do it. Their head coach, Antonio Coleman, had an injury to his leg earlier in the season, who has not been able to finish the season on the sideline. So we wish him the best. But, I mean, at the end of the day, Williamson needed this win. They got the win. I mean, UMS needed the win. They got the win. And, you can look at the log jam in 5A Region 1, and there's a good team that's not going to be in the playoffs because of some situations that have occurred here.
Yeah.
Caleb, I'm going to comment on this if you don't mind. Dude, I think if you look through the numbers on what's about to transpire, I think it's 706 total wins and 16 state championships about to square off.
Well, and we talked about the other night, it's over 150 playoff wins as well that's about to square off with each other.
Hey, Caleb, all we need now is Paul Benefield to come out in a Stone Cold Steve Austin vest and referee this match.
Or just,
and then we'll have a WrestleMania moment.
Quarter, all of a sudden you hear the music and here comes Fife walking down the hill, get on the field, and we go three-way there. That would be a ton of fun.
Hey, Caleb and Corey, I want both of you guys on this. This has obviously never been done. This is unprecedented. It can't be done because of the numbers. It could not have been. It's not possible by numbers that something like this has ever transpired. I don't think there's going to be a shadow of a doubt. It's going to be the biggest media buildup for a first round game, maybe in state history, because of what's about to transpire. But what do you think? This is going to be like a miniature state championship game, in my opinion, because both of those communities are going to want to show that their coach is the greatest coach of all time. Do y'all agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
I know I do. I mean, I know what Coach Terry Curtis means to this Mobile area, and his name synonymous across the state of Alabama with those 8 state championships that he has won. And then you look at the flip side of that, Danny Horn, and you just don't know who's going to surpass who at any point in time. But I just want the picture to be taken to where I can get both of them to autograph it, because at the end of the day, that's kind of like your Bear Bryant, Pat Dye picture together. That's your Bear Bryant, Joe Paterno picture together. Those are those iconic moments that you could see hanging in Baumhauer's anywhere in the state of Alabama, and people would recognize both of those if you love high school athletics here in the state of Alabama.
Oh, no, yeah, there's no doubt about it. And it should be an interesting matchup next Friday. And then moving on, Bo, Vestavia over Helena, they beat Homewood and Helena combined 77-0 this year, 87-0. I couldn't remember what it was, but I mean, I think it was 87-0. But that shows the difference in 7A and 6A, because that's a Helena team that was undefeated 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something. I'm news break. They're not going nowhere. They're not going nowhere. This is the new Vestavia. They're not going anywhere. You might as well get ready, because they're not going anywhere. This is what we're going to expect for them. This is the new expectation for Vestavia football. Graduated, what was it, Caleb? 50 seniors last year, or was it 40?
Yeah, it was like 42 or 43.
He graduated 42 players, and he's turned around and did what he's done this year. Incredible. You understand what I'm saying? This is the new standard.
He told me last year, he said, look, we're very senior-led this year. Next year may be a rough year, but after that, we feel good. Well, the year he was expecting to maybe be a rough year, it wasn't a rough year. And so
it's not. This is the new standard, Caleb.
Yeah.
Hey, look, and kudos to him, because you remember last year his statement was shockwaves around the state when he said, nobody's scared of Hoover. Nobody's scared of the Hoover Met. We don't care about that place. And I was like, bro. But now I'm like, dude, he wasn't joking.
No, he wasn't.
But to do that to Coach Busby, wow. I mean, they're for real, man. And they're a dangerous team, and I don't want to cross with them in Huntsville. If you're a Huntsville team, you don't want to cross with them.
The thing
it's coming.
If you're a Helena fan, you got to be a little concerned now, because second year in a row where you have a great regular season leading all the way up now to this point in the year. Last year they lost to Calera. This year they beat Calera, but then they lose to Benjamin Russell, lose to Vesta. It's the same thing as last year. They got beat in the first round last season, so it'll be very interesting to see if Coach Busby can now get his team back focused, because they're very capable. I mean, when you got Jordan Washington at running back, you're capable of going on a run here in the postseason. If they can get back to playing the way that they were playing very early in the year, this could be a dangerous football team in the 6A playoffs.
It might make sense for him to call Corey Labounty and find out his Madden run and shoot offense heading into the playoffs. It looks like Warren Moon's back there throwing darts online for him. I'm sure he could implement some of that as he heads into these playoffs.
Corey talked at the beginning about Viger, big win over Sidney Lanier. Lanier will play Benjamin Russell in the first round of the playoffs this next week. And then Bo, huge win for Weaver. I mean, 47-0 over Pleasant Valley. What a way to end the season for them. And I think this is a program I'm looking forward to following Weaver next year. They've got a lot of momentum now heading in to next year. And I think there'll be some excitement around that team and that program for the first time in a while going into a season in the 2024 football year.
Yep, just a couple of years removed from having a parade for winning their first game in, 30.
Yeah.
And now you see them, you said it, week one, the improvement that they've had each and every week. And there's talks, I don't know, and Corey will even know this. Corey, you may have heard this down there. They're talking about possibly merging Weaver and Sachs, which traditionally have a lot of athletes at both places, which would be a smart move. And they redid all of Weaver's school. So that could really be something in the near future. It's kind of hush-hush right now, but that's the talk in the town. And they have improved a lot. And, poor Coach Nix, they started out 4-0 at Pleasant Valley, was rolling until Brick Boy and I showed up. And I don't want to take the bullet for that. When we showed up to shoot their pregame, they got beat bad by Raglan that night, and it's been very bad since. And Caleb, guess what they've earned next week? A trip to Pisgah, Alabama, which is not where you want to be if you're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a tough one for them.
Yeah, that's like, I was at Wicksburg and Dadeville last night, and Wicksburg won, and all their fans were excited, and I was like, yeah, that's a good win for them, and now you've got to go to Reeltown next week. So you better enjoy this one, because you're going to have your work cut out for you next week. So, big matchup up around the Huntsville area last night. Athens and Russellville. I thought this was going to be a lot closer football game in Athens. They take care of business against Russellville. They came in 8-1. Had played extremely well in 5A. I said it the other night, Bo, if you hadn't been to Russellville, you need to go up there. Their baseball field may be the nicest one in the state. They've got an indoor facility that's underneath the bleachers out there, their whole locker room. It's a crazy setup for a place that's won a lot of baseball state championships, and their football field is gorgeous as well. It's got stone all around it, and great place. But Athens, they're taking care of business right now, and they seem to have some momentum now heading into the playoffs there in 6A North, and it'll be interesting to see kind of what goes on with that team. We saw Auburn with a win over Smith Station. That's not saying a lot right now. Smith Station's just not a very good football program, and they've got to get some things figured out there. And they're kind of in a tough spot. I didn't even realize this until somebody told me Smith Station was like a 3A or 4A school about 20 years ago, and now they've blown up to a 7A, and it's they can compete in some other sports. In baseball, they're really, really good, but they're just – seems like any of the athletes in that area find their way to Phoenix City, and that may be one of their problems as well. If they can get that figured out, you might see Smith Station back to competing a little bit. Beauregard, with a win over Lincoln, they're a 4 seed going into the playoffs. We see a 4 seed upset a 1 seed every year. They'll obviously have their work cut out for them, but could see Beauregard maybe make some noise and at least just make some things difficult for Gulf Shores next week with what they can do offensively. Benjamin Russell beats Valley last night, 35-19, so they're 8-2 as they head into the postseason. They'll host Lanier next Thursday night. Looking at some other ones, big win for Boaz again. Bo, what?
Hey, before we move on too far, have we got any updates on the Gulf Shores situation? Have you heard anything, Corey?
Yeah, you're at Saturday right now as we speak. They're getting ready to meet with the coaches in Montgomery who are playoff bound. And with Gulf Shores, officially, they ruled one of their student athletes eligible. So that's a step in the right direction. Of course, with it being a closed and tight-knit investigation, there's not a lot of leaks coming out from the AHSAA in regards to how many student athletes are involved. And I know that moving forward, I mean, it was kind of similar to what we saw 1 year ago with Saraland. The uncertainty, knowing we were in week number 2, not knowing whether Saraland was going to have to forfeit the win or whether someone was going to get an automatic bye. It's not unprecedented to have happened here in the state, to where you see teams have an automatic bye in the first round, the second round due to a forfeit. But you have people here. I mean, you look at Viger being that team that's on the outside looking in. If you're Marcus Cook and the guys, do you continue to practice this week, hoping that a decision's made in your favor, and maybe on Wednesday or possibly Tuesday that you get a shot to get ready for Beauregard? I mean, you just don't know in this situation. But, all things are, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And the AHSAA is going to do their due diligence. And if they don't find anything as of today, Gulf Shores is in. They are undefeated. And there's, you don't have to like it. But as of today, Gulf Shores is in.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it all works itself out. I'm looking for, I hope that they are able to get in. I mean, I want good teams in. If you're one of the best teams, go get in and get a chance to go play. And I mean, they're obviously one of the best teams when you see what they've been able to do so far this year. Bo, talk about this end of the season for Boaz. I mean, Coach Sullivan and company have kind of figured some things out, and big win over Lee Huntsville last night, 48-14.
Yeah, that was a big win for them. And the last 2 weeks they played 2 rivalry games, very eerily similar to each other. And they were tied at 21 in both of the rivalry games. And then I think they outscored their opponents once they were tied 21 in both of those games, 21-21 against Sardis, and then 21-21 against Douglas. They went on a double-digit runs both times and closed both those games out. They got the 4th seed. And listen to this, and you talked about a 4th seed beating a number 1 seed. Well, with the victory last night over Etowah, Southside up here in Gadsden has earned that number 1 seed. Mm-hmm. And guess who Boaz is going to visit? Southside. Now, what's interesting about that game is they just played a few weeks ago, went into overtime. Mm-hmm. Boaz has steadily gotten better. What if you say they had an Achilles heel early in the year? They couldn't stop nobody. Their defense has gotten better slowly, throughout the year. They got some really good coaches on that side of the ball. I don't know, what it was, but they've gotten a little bit better each and every week. But if you're Boaz and you're going to travel to a number 1 seed and you're playing a team that you went to overtime with, you have to have a little bit of confidence. And it's hard to beat somebody 2 times in a row. I know Southside will be ready for them. But, man, it was either going to be you're going to have to travel to Southside, move to your leads due to tiebreakers. And they're going to travel to Southside. So it's going to be an interesting playoff. And that game right there is going to be – that may be some people up in this part of the state's game of the week. That's going to be an interesting football game.
No doubt about it. It'll be a really fun matchup. Coach Danny Horn, Central Clay, they get their 3rd win over a 6A team this season, and they really dominated all 3 games. That's what's impressive about it. 2 of them, aren't as, I guess, good-looking wins as the win over, Wetumpka. I mean, Benjamin Russell beat Wetumpka, and then Russell County didn't have a great year this year. But the win over Benjamin Russell early in the year, 30-13, that stands out now, especially when you look at what Benjamin Russell's gone on to do this year. 3 wins over 6A teams, and then a dominant win over Handley as well in the non-region. I'm telling you, I saw a guy make a post the other day. He was making predictions on who's going to make it in 5A, and he said Charles Henderson, and it's no disrespect to Charles Henderson, but this is Charles Henderson team that's lost to Rehoboth, lost to Carroll of Ozark. I mean, if anything, it's Gulf Shores and Central Clay.
Gulf Shores and Central Clay
matchup.
Yep.
It'll be really interesting to watch, but it's hard to doubt Danny Horn when November comes rolling around. I mean, 75. Yeah. He's 75-23 in his playoff career. Now over 350 wins, and it'll be interesting to see how all that.
Caleb, run it by me again. Did you say 75-23?
Yeah. He's 75-23, and Terry Curtis is 81-23, and then Paul Benefield is 63-23. So all 3 of them have 23 losses together at the same time, which is just incredible.
It's incredible, man. It's incredible.
And then Central Coosa, they got to win over Otagoville. Shout out to Shundell Rusall, head coach there at Central Coosa, and a big win for him to end off the regular season. Central Phoenix City continues dominating. They finished the year 10-0, dominate Prattville last night. They're the favorite in 7A right now. It's going to, to me, Corey, it's no disrespect to MGM, but MGM's going to have to knock them off. I mean, Phoenix City's been there every single year. They've been there. They're experienced in that game. It'll be new to MGM if they get to that point. they've got to knock them off. Right now, Central Phoenix City's the favorite, but don't be surprised if MGM's sitting there at the end as well.
Hey, look, I'm not definitely going to downplay MGM and the success they've had. You look 1 year ago, Caleb, who did MGM see in that first round of the playoffs as a 4 seed? Well, they ran into Central and Phoenix City. So the good thing is you get a chance, if things hold up, to see how far and how much your program has literally grown within a year. And I'm not going to say that you're at a point to where, hey, this is going to be that type of rivalry game. But if a team eliminates me 1 year ago, I want to see that same team again so I can see and pull that, hey, look, yeah, you handled me in the first time. We were shell-shocked, but MGM is going to give, I guarantee, Central and Phoenix City all they can handle. You won't see that type of final score that we saw 1 year ago in the first round of the playoffs if this holds up, because MGM is the real deal, and their head coach, Zach Golson, has been doing remarkable things down this way.
When you
I've got a proposal.
When y'all look at
I got a proposal, Caleb.
Huh?
I got a proposal for us three. If MGM goes on and wins this whole thing, us three's going to the MGM Grand to celebrate.
Hey, I'm all in. I'm all in.
2-day weekend. You guys will fly, and I'll meet you there because I'm not getting back on a plane. And we'll spend the weekend, and then I'll see you guys back here.
I'm in.
All right, let's do it. We're going to make a pact. We're going to spend a weekend together at the MGM Grand if the MGM wins this whole thing.
Go Vikings.
Hey,
all right, Caleb, go ahead.
You know, what I was going to say is when you look at how quiet Thompson's been this year, I mean, you know, yeah, they've dominated some, but they've also had some close games. You know, I mean, Vestavia was 7-3 with them late in the game. And, you know, they're obviously the loss early in the year to Clay Chalkville. Do y'all, I mean, is there part of y'all that feels like Central Phoenix City and MGM are favorites over Thompson going into the 7A playoffs to be able to win it this year?
Hey, another X factor is Auburn's got their quarterback back now.
Yeah, well, and you got that sitting up there in the north too that can make some noise and affect Thompson.
That's an X factor, buddy.
Twice, they'd have to beat Vestavia twice more than likely.
Yep. I mean, I think the playing field's more level now than it's been in a long time.
Yeah, no, I think we've gone in these last couple, and it's like, all right, well, who's Thompson playing in the state champion? Is it going to be Auburn or Phoenix City? I mean, it was those.
That's right.
And Hoover was in the mix, but Thompson had kind of gotten over that Hoover hump and has never really looked back since Talia, dove into the end zone that night. I mean, really, since that point, Thompson's dominated that rivalry with Hoover in the meaningful games. You know, and I'm not saying those late region championship games weren't meaningful, but I think Thompson had been saving some stuff for that second matchup over the last couple of years when you kind of look at how things have gone. So moving on from that, big win for Chilton County over Marbury to end off their season last night, 53-18. It's a good win for them. Walter Welborn falls last night, Bo, to Cleveland County. That really shocked me when I saw that one. I was very surprised by that.
You know what's surprising, Caleb, is you said it last week. You didn't like the way they performed the week before.
Yeah.
How they just kind of sluggish through the game and ended up pulling out a victory. And then you get in a scenario where Cleveland County had two options. They could lose to Walter Welborn in this tiebreaker scenario, or they can go win the game and win the region outright. And just off the points and stuff. So that is what Cleveland County did. They were the more hungry team. Walter Welborn seems to have eased up on the throttle a little bit heading into this playoffs, which is the last thing you want to do as a football team. You want to be full throttle ahead. So that concerns me if I'm a Walter Welborn fan. Not saying Coach Smith's forgotten more football than I'll ever know, but it's just body language. It's you can just feel it. They're not clicking like they were earlier in this year, which is what gained them that region championship.
Yeah, no, it almost kind of feels like they set out on this mission to win the region championship. Now that they've done it, it's like, all right,
that's it.
And now you still got 7 more games to play, and they've
that's it
over the last 2 weeks. And Corey, they're going to get Flomaton next week. And, you know, what do you know about this Flomaton team that's going to be coming up to Walter? Obviously, going to be a long, long trip for them, but can they come up here and make some noise against Walter Welborn?
Yeah, Flomaton's one of those teams. Again, Flomaton, the Hurricanes have never shied away from anyone or anything, because you look at them winning a state championship a couple of years ago, and the tradition there is rich. And anytime you look at your non-region schedule and a coach that's not scared to play big boy football, you absolutely love Flomaton's opportunity to go and make some noise.
Yeah, no, and when I saw that was the matchup that region, the Walter Welborn, Dadeville, Randolph County region. I mean, like Randolph County beat Dadeville to get the second seed, and their reward is playing W.S. Neal now in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, it didn't matter what matchup you got in that region; it was going to be tough matching up with that Flomaton, W.S. Neal, Thomasville, and Mobile Christian region, because all four of those teams are extremely good. I mean, Mobile Christian's in a class above those other three, but those other three are really good, and I would maybe argue that they're better than the teams from that Dadeville region altogether too. So it'll be very interesting to see how all that ends up playing itself out. Big win for Daphne last night. Corey, is Daphne in?
Yeah, Daphne is in. Kenny King and the Trojans found a way to get it done. And, whether they're not a 1 seed or a 4 seed or a 2 seed or a 3 seed, at the end of the day, the Trojans have a chance to play one more week of football. And, everybody is 0-0 starting this coming week.
Bo, Coosa Christian 49, Victory Christian 0. We kind of expected that win to happen, but I mean, this is a defense that they're going to play the last team that scored an offensive touchdown against them next week in the playoffs, and they haven't played each other since week 2 of the season. That kind of tells you how dominant Coosa Christian's been on defense.
Yeah, Corey, I don't know if he got to hear this last week. Coosa Christian has not given up a defensive point since September 1st. And if anybody, I don't know of a team that has not given up a single defensive point in their entire region season ever. And that includes 5, because I know they gave up 3 that year, that they only gave up 40-something total. I believe Clay gave up 28 one year total in 15 games or something like that. I don't know if they gave up a region defensive point that year or not. It's the first time I've ever seen that.
Yeah.
But yeah, with all the stuff going on outside of the walls in the halls and the football field with Coosa, they've now here's when you get through all the smoke, here's what's transpired. They have all of their guys back next week, all of them, except one, and they're working on him right now. And he, from what I've been told, actually lives in district, but they're waiting to make sure that the paperwork for his parents gets finalized or whatever the case may be. So all of this stuff has transpired into the losses, the forfeit losses, but now they got everybody back. But here's the interesting thing, and this is what I like about Spring Garden. And I talked to Coach Ragsdale, and shout out to the Spring Garden Lady Panthers for winning the state in 1A volleyball. And
hey, you had 3 teams from that region up there win it in volleyball with Spring Garden, Sandrock, and Plainview all winning one.
Well, Sandrock ended up losing in the finals, but Pleasant Valley's from this region, and they won. Yeah. But they played Pleasant Valley, who's also from this region. Yes, Pleasant Valley won, Plainview won, and Spring Garden won. Yeah, that's 1, 2, and 3A right there. So shout out to all those ladies for winning. But yeah, I talked to Coach Ragsdale. One thing I like about Spring Garden, they're a true blue blood of 1A North. They're in the conversation every single year. They made back-to-back semifinal losses. If it wasn't for Mars Hill, they'd have been playing for state championships. A lot of people are like, nobody wants to win between Raglan and Spring Garden because they got to host Coosa. The other one travels to Valleyhead. Well, no, Coach Ragsdale went out there and won the game outright by double digits. So they deserve to host. And, they're not scared of anybody. And I know Coach O'Brien Company wants Spring Garden because that's who they want to play, because that's who they've played 3 times previous this year. So it's going to be an interesting game. I'm telling you right now, there will be some pads popping like it's not been seen in 1A North in a long time in that football game. And, unfortunately, I have to do the final drive at the studio in DeKalb County. I will not be at the game, but Brick Boy's doing the season documentary with him. He'll be there for us. But if you want to see a good, hard-hitting high school football game in 1A North, go to Spring Garden next week. You're going to see some tremendous collisions in that game. It's going to be a very hard physical game.
Corey Chavis-Williams done a great job at Dora. They beat St. Clair County last night. They win that region up there, and we got to see them against Oak Grove on the TV game of the week a couple of weeks ago. He's got a good-looking group up there, and has done a really good job. And so shout out to him and what he's been able to accomplish. Hey, big win for Douglas to end off the regular season last night as well, Bo, over North Sand Mountain, 56-26. And after having that group in with us on Marshall County, keeping up Marshall County athletics, I'm really happy for them to end the year on a good note, because it seems like it was just a very tough year. It wasn't the year they really envisioned going into it, and the injury bug got them, and it never let up on that Douglas group.
Yeah, proud of those guys, man. They fought through a lot, and to get a victory like that to close the season out, it's good for those seniors.
Yeah.
It's good for those program, and that's the things you need when you're heading into the off season. That's a momentum carrier, over into the off season, and they needed that.
Hey, is Elba 1A or 2A?
They're 1A.
They're 1A. Okay, I saw KT Thornton. He commented earlier and said Leroy's the favorite in 1A. I would agree with him, Corey, but I think Elba, they got a running back who's a game changer. I mean, the guy's averaging 16.8 yards per carry. He has 39 touchdowns in 9 games going into last night. And I think he's a game changer. And then obviously we just talked about Coosa Christian in the North. I mean, I would have to say I think Coosa Christian's a favorite in the North to make it. And they don't give up any points defensively. That's going to make it tough for anybody who matches up with that group in the state championship.
Anytime you're sitting there like Bo mentioned, and you're not giving up defensive points since the beginning of September, here we are. You flip the page 2 months later, and you're holding people without points. That's very impressive. Any classification of football, period. And I do say again, Leroy is the favorite there. Elba, you have that one player that can make a difference, but it's hard even at the 7A level to let one guy completely dominate another 10. So Leroy, I think that's, again, with what they have at stake with missing their coach, that's why you got to give the tip of the cap there for my pick and prediction to win it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bo, last year we kind of felt like, with the play that happened in that Pickens County Coosa Christian game, you could have had Leroy and Coosa Christian a year ago, playing in the championship. And so we might finally get that matchup a year later in Bryant-Denny.
Well, all this off the field stuff and the forfeitures has done nothing but unite Coosa, and it's made them laser focused. And O'Brien, he said, I mean, through all the, and I take criticism for being so close to the program and doing a documentary with them. People are like, "Why are you so close to them?" Coach O'Brien embraces the hate and the people that don't like. He don't care. He's a Navy SEAL. He don't care of opinions, so to speak. It don't bother him, so to speak. It just rolls off his back. And like Corey said, it's hard for one guy to beat a group of guys because here's why: because that guy is definitely not going to affect the game defensively. They still got to get stops. And when you look at Leroy from top to bottom probably would be your clear-cut favorite this year. And it's going to take a team that has a group of guys that plays together to beat a team like that, and a lot of heart, because I know Leroy ain't going to quit. Anytime you're led by a military gentleman, they're not going to quit. But in the case of Coosa, here's the other factor. And people remember the Super Bowl a few years back when Percy Harvin had to set out with that injury for all those months, and he made it back in the Super Bowl. He looked like he was in a different gear because he had rested. His body was fully healed, and he went out there and he looked like he's in a different gear as the year they played Denver. And but it's a scenario with these kids. These kids have been sitting on the sidelines resting, healing, ready to play. O'Brien sat them all. He sat 12 kids while all this has been transpiring, and now they're all cleared and they'll all be back for spring garden. So, man, it's tough. 1A North's going to be a tough one. That's a tough draw for Coosa as well to go to spring garden. That's a tough draw, man. That's not a place that's easy to win. I mean, they've dominated everybody, but spring garden. That was a 21-6 win. So we'll see next week. This time Friday, Saturday morning, we'll be talking about it.
Fairhope over Briarwood, Corey. Big win for Fairhope because that's a Briarwood team. I watched them against Benjamin Russell. They're big. I mean, they don't necessarily have the most speed, but they're a big group, and that's a good win for Fairhope to beat that Briarwood group.
Well, you end the season on a winning note. Unfortunately, they went sub 500 for the year. Tim Carter and the Fairhope Pirates not used to that. Their first losing record, I think, since 2016. So you look at the success that Tim Carter has had since coming over from Auburn, and kudos to the Pirates for fighting. They're a little bit undermanned in 7A. One of the smaller size-wise 7A programs that you'll meet, but they're not going to quit and lay down for anybody. So that's a big-time win for them to end the season. Get some momentum going into the offseason.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And KT Thornton, we were talking about Elba. He brings up a good point. They've got a tough test. They got Millread opening up next week in the playoffs. And Millread, very, very good team. That'll be a good test for them to get things going. He also says Braden Hubner is the real deal at quarterback for Leroy, and there's no doubt about that. We got to see that last season as well. And so looking at some of these other scores, LaFleur, they fall last night, Corey, to Faith Academy. They play them well, but it's a good Faith program down there that seems to have some momentum heading into the postseason here at the right time. Foley over Jackson Olin, 38-26, a good win for that group. Foley's in also, right?
Foley's out. They're on the
Okay,
outside looking in. Perry Uno Thompson did not play last night, shut it down. Coach wanted to make sure that he stayed healthy for what he has at task coming up here as the future Auburn Tiger. And also Colton Nero, the running back, 320-something yards, 5 touchdowns. Is Foley celebrating their 100th year of football in the school history. Now he's the school's all-time leading rusher. So that's a feather in his cap as he's a tremendous back that has gotten a lot of attention leading the state in rushing this year.
Bo, you talked about Fort Payne over Cherokee County earlier, holding that Cherokee County offense to 14. That's impressive, and that's going to help this Fort Payne team. If they can get going defensively, they got a quarterback that can sling it around. That's the recipe to go win. You got to be able to play defense, though. You're not going to win shootouts when November rolls around. It's going to be a night where it's freezing cold, the ball's hard. You're going to drop some passes. Got to be able to play defense, and very, very good, I think, for that Fort Payne group to finally find a little bit and stop the run last night against Cherokee County. I mean, that stood out and was impressive when I saw that score last night. We had a comment on here, said Gators Abner, he said, Elba and Georgiana, the best teams in 1A. Well, Georgiana, they dominated Pleasant Home last night, 61-0. They've got a lot of momentum going into the postseason. Slow start for Gulf Shores last night, Corey, 43-21 over BC Rain. They pulled away late. Do you feel like any of the stuff that's going on around the program contributed to that slow start last night and just, paying attention to outside noise, things of that nature?
No, BC Rain is that good. I mean, BC Rain had won 5 or 6 games in a row and we're playing extremely hot football. But, guys, I've been watching a lot of middle school, high school, college NFL games. I have never seen a player score 3 special teams touchdowns in one quarter. Ronnie Royal was able to accomplish that last night, a couple of kickoffs for touchdowns and a punt return for a touchdown. BC Rain, I guess, didn't get the memo in regards, don't kick to this kid. 3 in a quarter. I've never seen that before. Have you guys ever witnessed that?
No, I've never.
No.
It's unbelievable when you think about that statistics, and he also had 11 tackles and 1 interception. So the outside noise, no, because a week ago they were able to handle Viger. This week they were able to handle BC Rain. So Gulf Shores, they're going to block out the distractions. They're going to let the AHSAA do what they need to do, but they're preparing to go 1 week at a time and get these next 5 wins to hoist up that blue map and finish the season undefeated. So kudos to those young men for making history and going undefeated and blocking out the distractions as well.
And Corey, 3 special team touchdowns, that was the difference in the game.
Yes.
Hey, Corey, when he was up here at Alexandria, he was doing some incredible things. That he was a generational type player as a freshman up here. And when he got down there, I remember everybody saying, man, that guy, come see him when he's a junior or a senior.
Yeah.
And you know what? A lot of times expectations gets the best of guys, but it didn't him. He seems to be on this, and you said it best, he seems to be on this level that not many players can achieve in this state, even if they hit their max potential, but he dominates the game defensively the same way. That's what's scary about him.
Mm-hmm. Special to watch, and look forward to seeing them chase it despite all the outside noise. Like I said, very similar to the outside noise that Saraland had to deal with a year ago. You see where they wound up being, and you handle the business every week by week, 1 week at a time, and you just prepare for your next opponent, and that's the mentality of Coach Hudspeth. Good luck to the Dolphins moving forward for sure.
Gunnersville over Albertville last night, Bo. We talked about it on Wednesday night. It seems like they got that loss to ARAB, and it woke this group. I think that was the worst thing for 5A North was that Gunnersville got beat, because I think it woke this group up a little bit, and they've played extremely well the last 2 weeks now. I mean, 55-0 and 57-16 the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, and it was 50-0 at halftime. Albertville is a 7A team that is struggling, but Caleb, their best thing that happened to them was that loss to ARAB. Best thing. At the time, you thought it was devastating, but it's the best thing that happened to them because it's woke them up, and it's really made them refocus. They don't care what the seeds are. They don't care if they're the number 1 seed. They want to go play football. And Caleb, that's exactly what they're doing. And if anybody on paper, now this is no shot at any team up here in 5A North, but on paper, the majority of your fans and coaches will say if there's a team outside of Birmingham that can go do some damage in 5A North, it's going to be Gunnersville. because of the running back they have, because of the quarterback they have. They have an offensive lineman with 14 or 15 D1 offers.
Yeah.
And they play very sound defense, and they do not turn the ball over. Those are all recipes for success. But this is the perfect time to show all that because the playoffs are here. And that loss woke them up. And Coach Reese and company is welcoming this challenge coming up because now one thing it did do, Caleb, is it took the spotlight off of them because they looked like they were cruising to the playoffs. They're going to be a top 5 ranked team in the state, and they were going to be hosting. And that was all. It looked like it's already predetermined. Like we were just watching a movie, and then bam, they lose that shocker to Arab. And then you think that it would crush it. Most programs, that would have been a crushing loss. You do what good coaches do. Coach Reese rallied the troops. They're refocused, and now they're playing the best football of the season.
Yeah, and they've outscored their opponents 116-16 the last 2 weeks. So,
man, come on now.
How
Talk to me, brother. Golly.
Including a big rivalry win last night. Horseshoe Bend win over Beulah is a good way for them to end their season last night, and happy for that group. Horseshoe Bend's close to Alex City, and so they've always kind of struggled a little bit. It's always good when you can see that they got a couple wins this year, which is really good for that program and what Coach Phillips is trying to do there. And he's done a good job since taking over there as a Danny Horn disciple, and you see some of Coach Horn's footprints in that program. They run the wishbone, they do some spread stuff. I mean, it's very similar to what Coach Horn likes to do, and he's trying to implement that same thing there at Horseshoe Bend. But you've talked about it, Bo. You got to have the Jimmies and the Joes too, and that makes a difference. And there's not a knock on them, but there's just not a ton of Jimmies and Joes there at Horseshoe Bend, and that's any year, and that would be with any coach that's taken over there. It's just not an easy place to win football games at, and he's done a really good job there. John Carroll, they take care of Maplesville last night. Maplesville's another team. They can make some noise in 1A. They got an 8th grade running back at Maplesville. I'm telling you, everybody's going to want to watch out for this guy. He's going to have a chance to be a special football player in the future. And we got to see him in that game at Lochapoka on Thursday night a couple weeks ago. And, while they ended up losing that game, when he got the football in his hands, you could tell there's a difference in him and some of the other guys in the field, and that's only as an 8th grader. So looking forward to seeing how he grows as a football player. They always seem to find a guy. Corey, what was it, Dunlap a couple of years ago at Maplesville when they won all the ones in a row, and we just kept I can remember you and Luke calling games as Dunlap for a touchdown, Dunlap for a touchdown. This kid has a chance to be the same exact way as that guy. There at Maplesville, they just always seem to find one guy that can step up and do that. Muscle Shoals a team to watch out for in 6A North. I think everybody's talking about Clay Chalkville and Parker and some. Muscle Shoals a team that can come make some noise and can be a problem for people. They score points, and for the most part, they play D. The only time they have given up points this year is their matchup with Hartselle, and they ended up finding a way to win that one in overtime. And so I think they got a chance to make some noise and be a very dangerous team in 6A North. And then Oak Grove with a big win over Carbon Hill. That was good for them, coming off that loss to Dora last week and building up some momentum for them as well going into the postseason. So looking at some of the other scores from around the state, Oxford over Jacksonville last night, Bo. Talk about this game. We thought Jacksonville was going to be able to – we thought it'd be high scoring. I thought, hey, Oxford's probably going to win because of depth and just, who they've played against this year. You saw how well they played Clay Chalkville, how well they played Hartselle, dominating McAdory and Huntsville to start the year. I thought they'd win the game. I didn't think it'd be 36-7 and they'd hold this Jacksonville offense to 7 points. Very impressive win for Oxford heading into the postseason.
Oxford, very, very interesting matchup, Caleb. And the FHS betting odd line was Jacksonville -4.
Yeah.
Because they were hosting Corey.
That's a good deal.
Corey, listen, I got to tell Corey this. I don't know if Corey's aware of this. Corey, going into that game, you had two of the best quarterbacks. I don't even think it's arguably in this part of the state, like geographically. Obviously, Jacksonville's a South team, but they're in the same county. Mason Mims had 2,240-something yards, 22 touchdowns, only 2 picks. Jim Ogles at Jacksonville had 2,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, 4 picks heading into that game. So whichever quarterback got loose, took care of the ball and played the better game, I thought was going to be the favorite in that game. Obviously, Oxford has more depth. And I think it was a shot at Oxford to be an underdog in that game, and they took it personal. And they come out and dominated the football game. And for Sam Adams, and I've said this best, Corey, I know you've probably seen the pictures in the video Brick Boy and I did of the facility there at Oxford, 63,000 square foot indoor facility they just built. If you're going to beat Oxford, you better get it in now. I'm just telling you. I promise you, you better beat them now because you got maybe a year or two left.
It's coming.
And they're fixing to be the Oxford of old, my friend. It is coming, and it's like a freight train.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Big win for Pisgah over North Jackson last night, Bo. I mean, that was a North Jackson team. They were hot coming into this game. They were putting up points. They put up 84 points the week before. We're able to score 24, but it's just even Fife wasn't able to stop this Pisgah offense. It was Pisgah defense that let them down in that matchup. This Pisgah offense, they can score, and if they can just find a way to get some stops in the postseason, they're a dangerous group there in 2A.
They can score on anybody, Caleb. And that's an old rivalry. North Jackson, there was two schools that combined to make North Jackson, and those used to be rival schools of Pisgah. But now they're in Stevenson, Alabama, and that's where North Jackson was created. It's the first time those kids or prior communities have played Pisgah since the 90s, I believe. So it was a big, Jackson County rivalry, even though they hadn't played each other. You said it best, though, Caleb. Last week, this team scored 80-plus points. This week, they held them to 20. Yeah. And some of those points was late when it really didn't matter. And stop me if this sounds like a broken record. Pisgah plays a football game. Pisgah scores 50-plus. Yeah. Pisgah plays a football game. They score half 100. It's every week. And they played Fife and put up, 42, 46?
Yeah, I mean, who's allowed to put up 42 on Fife? I mean, I'd love
we looked that up. It was 2013. It was 2013 since Fife had given up 40 points.
That's crazy.
So, and they did it by committee. You can't key in on one guy, but one guy you can key in on is their quarterback, Holcomb. He's just a 4-year guy who started 4 years. He don't make bad decisions. He takes his check downs. He takes what the defense gives him. If you cannot get to him and get him on the ground and you give him time to throw, they will score 50 points. And I don't care who they're playing. It can be B.B. Comer. It can be Fife. It can be whoever. If you don't get to him and get him down on the ground, they will score 40 to 50 points on you. Period. It's going to happen. Yeah. They just have too many weapons on the edge, and the way Luke Pruitt runs his offense, brother of Jeremy Pruitt, for those who don't know, maybe in the South, is Jeremy Pruitt's brother. He's just they're well coached. They got weapons. They spread you out. You got linebackers guarding slot guys that can get open. A bunch of Edelmans running around out there, and they just get open. They just out scheme you, really. Yeah. So when you play them, just know if you give Holcomb time, they're putting up 40 or 50. Period. Now, if you go score on them and beat them, kudos to you, but you're going to have to score because they are going to score.
Big win for Sachs last night over Talladega Bo. Great way for them to end the year. They don't go winless this year, and so I think that's right. Huge for Coach Freeney and his group there, and it's a young group. So I think now you get a win to end the year, and now all off season you feel good about yourself. You feel good about the program. I mean, just getting one win, especially when it's that last one of the year, I think it's a big difference maker. So really good win there for Sachs, finding a way to win a close game last night with a young group. I think it's going to help that team going forward. Corey. Second time this year that Saraland scores on every possession that they touch the football offensively. They're just, McGill finds a way to score 27 against this defense. Maybe a lot of them came late in the game because they hadn't given up this many, points to really anybody besides Lipscomb this year. But when you're scoring 70, it doesn't matter how many points you give up. And this is a dangerous offense heading into the postseason.
Yeah, it's basketball on grass or turf last night for sure. You look at the basketball score all season long. The starters have only played a complete 4 quarters, one game this year, and that was against Lipscomb. And last night they got punched in the mouth, went down and trailed 7-0. McGill, this is the first time they trailed since Lipscomb. Wow. And that's the type of shot in the mouth that Coach Kelly wanted them to take because you need that type of adversity. Anytime you're resting your starters, and they have not finished an entire game since week 1, that's when you know that, hey, look, I do have a great squad, but I need to be tested in some shape, form, or fashion because these next 5 weeks, you're going to be tested in order to make that blue map, on that road to that blue map that you guys have and produce and do a great job on. That road to the blue map, yes, Saraland took the map down here, but again, Caleb, what they're doing and the valuable experiences that these guys, the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s are getting for Saraland, that's how you build a strong culture year out.
No doubt. I mean, that's what you're seeing with Thompson right now. They've had so many years where they've been able to just get guys in that, I mean, they're experienced by the time they start, and it's their turn to play, and they don't blink, and so Saraland's kind of going down that same path. We saw Spanish Fort do that for a lot of years, as well, and now Saraland's kind of taking that same blueprint, doing the same thing. Bo, big win for Sardis to end off the year last night. Huge for B.J. Brooks, and big for those seniors as well to go out on a positive note. They started out the year well. It obviously didn't go as well as they wanted it to in region play, but that's a good Hoax Bluff team that they beat 42-20 last night.
Big win, intercounty rivalry up here in Etowah County. Here's why it's a big win. It's the first winning season in Sardis since 2017.
Wow.
Those seniors won more games this year than they had the previous 3 years combined. So that is how you start a foundation of a future program that you're going to turn around. They played for a state championship in baseball last year.
Mm-hmm.
These same group of guys, they're the favorites. They only lost one guy off that roster and gained 2 or 3 more heading into this baseball season. So they're the favorite probably to win 5A in baseball this year. So there's a lot of good things happening in the Sardis community. B.J. Brooks is an outstanding job coming over from Hoover, worked on their offensive staff. I believe he's a quarterback's coach. So he's done a great job there. And that was a big win over Hoax Bluff last night, who's the playoff team. But you know what? The most impressive thing is that I have to say for him is the atmosphere changed.
Yeah.
And both of you guys need to see what I'm talking about here. They have a legit tailgate now at Sardis. Like there's like, I don't know, 8-10 tables set up, people cooking and grilling right outside their field house. You can smell the food in the field house. And it's an actual, it looks like a miniature college pregame there. Kids are dancing, music's blaring, and they do it right where the visiting team has to come through, so they get to see that. That's a really cool atmosphere.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this, and we'll move on. I'm not going to touch on it because it's not in my business. They had a freaking train horn mounted on their stadium that they were blowing, and the AHSAA made them remove that. So what the fans did to negate that is they brought those air train horns, and they walk in with them. So that's a new tradition there as well. But man, it would rattle the fillings in your teeth when they would rip that thing off. But yeah, it's kudos to B.J. Brooks, man. Great job this season to finish the season out 6-4.
Yeah, Scottsboro, they get a win over Decatur, 35-20. Didn't necessarily play great in that game, but a good win for them to get that win there and move on. Decatur, not a great team this year. They finished 3-7, which is not normal there. And we talked about it on Wednesday night, Bo. Decatur's one of those communities. They had a bad year this year. That means next year they're going to bounce back and probably be pretty good again. So still a good win there for Scottsboro. Needed some momentum heading into the postseason here. Moving on, Sipsey Valley over Northside, so a good win for them. Appalachian, tough end of the year for them, Bo. Just great start to the season. Felt good about what they could maybe go and accomplish, and they didn't end the year on a good note here, and really kind of really fell apart over the last half of the season, in my opinion. Which I hate that for them because there was so much excitement around that program and around what they had done here early in the season. And then Southside, they get the win over Etowah. You talked about that earlier, Bo. Gets them the region championship, so they're going to be hosting Boaz in a rematch of a game that was 48-45 in overtime. Week 6, I think, of this year is when they played against each other. So one of those non-region matchups, and so that'll be a fun one there. Springville over Pell City. It's Springville's first non-losing season in a long time. I saw it on AL.com. I can't remember how many years it was, but first time in a long time that they hadn't had a losing season there. So that was a really good win for them. And we've talked about it all year. You better get Pell City and Rush Probst right now because they're coming. I mean, Pell City wasn't in any of these games that they've been in this season last year, and I'm telling you better watch out for Pell City. They're going to get some guys in there, and I'm not saying they're recruiting, but I'm saying people want to go play for Rush Probst. There's going to be some players from some of those communities that move over there, and it'll be really interesting to see that program grow over the next couple of years. It's going to be I think you talked about it earlier, Bo. Jake Gaines has made that Moody and Leeds rivalry big. Well, that Pell City and Moody rivalry is now about to become big as well, and that's going to be enlarged to both of them, to both Rush Probst and Jake Gaines, coming in and doing what they've done at those respective programs there. St. James over Carroll of Ozark in overtime last night, 49-48, a great game, great challenge for St. James. I think you're seeing the defending 3A champs start to really figure themselves here out at the right time, heading into the postseason. Their only loss on the year is to Hanley. They're 9-1. Only lost to Hanley week 2 of the year, and they seem to figure themselves out. And they gave Trinity their only loss. Trinity finished 9-1 this year, and St. James beat them like 45-17. So St. James starting to really get going, and they have a chance to make some noise. And could say that St. James and Mobile Christian game could be a lot of fun if they end up meeting the 3rd or 4th round, depending on how that bracket works itself out. Bo, I was shocked about this one last night. Sylacauga 32, Piedmont 31. Did not expect. I know that Piedmont's a smaller school than Sylacauga, but Sylacauga just got their first win in 20 games 2 weeks ago, had a bye week. I didn't expect Piedmont to give up 32 points to Sylacauga last night. Not the way they've been playing defense this year.
Yeah, and you got to give it kudos to Sylacauga on that one. That was a grit win because Piedmont seemed to have turned that corner. They were going to be on the outside looking in. Had AHSAA won last week in the tiebreakers, I think it would have Piedmont would have been on the outside looking in of the playoffs. But since they went on and handled business, Plainview beat AHSAA, then that made Piedmont not only in but the 3rd seed because they had beat the next tiebreakers, the head-to-head, so they beat Hoax Bluff. They seemed like they had turned the corner, and they still may have turned the corner. Obviously Sylacauga is a bigger school in classification, and that always plays into it from a depth standpoint. But that was a grit win for Sylacauga, and they needed it because, I don't know what the losing streak was up to until it finally got snapped this year with 20 games. Wow. And then anytime you're in a city where you're literally a football toss away from a school who's ranked number 1 in the state and rolling like B.B. Comer is, and you share a stadium with them, each loss that you have is magnitude times 20 because the team that's literally a quarter of a mile down the road from you that shares your stadium's undefeated number 1 in the state. So they needed that win from a standpoint of morale. And, maybe this is a blessing for Jonathan Miller and Piedmont to refocus, regroup heading into these playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt about it. T.R. Miller over W.S. Neal last night, 36-8. And then Corey Theodore 20, St. Paul's 10. Theodore goes to Hueytown in the first round. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's going to be a great matchup. And I know here's the thing with that game. That game was 3-0 for the longest. And then you had a 4th quarter, the last 3.5 minutes of an offensive explosion. And Steve Mask returning back to St. Paul's since having won multiple state championships there. I know that was a very unique and awkward experience for him at the same time. But his new team, the Theodore Bobcats, find a way to beat St. Paul's. And, you were battling for 3 and 4 seed. Did you want to be a 4 seed and travel to a 1 seed, or did you want that 2-3 matchup? And because of the win that Theodore had, now there'll be a 3 seed.
Yeah, and I can tell you, you'd much rather play Hueytown in the first round than play Hillcrest Tuscaloosa.
That's correct.
Yeah, that was a big win last night for them. And I can tell you, the winner of that Theodore Hueytown game is going to play the winner of Benjamin Russell, Sidney Lanier. And I was saying the other night, if you're Benjamin Russell, you better be hoping that Hueytown can get a win because I don't know that you want to see this Theodore defense in round number 2. Especially you would have to go down to Mobile and play against them, which is not fared very good for Benjamin Russell having to go down to Mobile any of the years they've had to do that. So it could be interesting next week. Tuscaloosa Academy over Holt, 39-16. Bo, we talk about it each and every week. I mean, that's just a program. I don't know of an AHSAA program that has made the move to the AHSAA as well as what we've seen at Tuscaloosa Academy over the last 2 years. And really, really interested to see how their postseason goes and looking forward to keeping up with them here over the next couple of weeks as well. Tuscaloosa County, they end the year on a good note there with Coach Weingarten. 42-14 over Brookwood. Wadley over Woodland. Another dangerous team in 1A there. And Wadley, a team that played for a state championship 2 years ago and seems to kind of be back, with a chance to go and compete and get back to Tuscaloosa to go play for a state championship. Huge win for Coach Steve Smith, Bo, and Westbrook Christian. 45-16 over White Plains. They needed some positivity to end off the year. And like we said with some of the other guys, I mean, you better get Westbrook Christian this year because going into next year, they're going to be a lot different team and have a chance to go and really make some noise.
And all thoughts and prayers with Coach Blanchard, Tara's dad. Unfortunately, his cancer has come back. Esophageal cancer. I don't know how to esophageal what that word is, but thoughts and prayers with him. You know, he had to sit out a game for the first time in 20 years this year. His throat had closed up on him, and they had to go in and do some things to correct that. But yeah, you know, he had beaten cancer before, and it's back. So thoughts and prayers with him and that community there at Westbrook Christian. He came over with Steve, obviously from Piedmont, and man, that's the first and foremost thing I want to talk about. The second thing is what Westbrook Christian did on the field, closing out strong last night. We're about to do a facility tour with them like we did at Oxford, and what they've done at Westbrook Christian is no slouch as well. From new turf football field, new field house, that's state of the art, a new hitting indoor facility that's been revamped, a new baseball. A players' lounge, which Caleb has seen, it's a second to none. It's as good as JSU's. Now they have a competition gym like Supreme Courts up here, where they have 2 full courts where they can host tournaments and things, volleyball, basketball. We're going to tour all that with Steve Smith. So the future is very bright at Westbrook Christian. And thoughts and prayers goes out with Coach Blanchard and Steve Smith's right-hand man as he's battling his cancer again, unfortunately.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers definitely out to him. I hate to hear that. And
That's bad.
yeah, it's hopefully he can beat it again. He's done it once. Hopefully we can see
Yeah,
him do
if
it
anybody
again.
can, it's that man right there. He's a battler, man.
There's no doubt about it. I talked about this earlier. Wicksburg, they beat Dayville in overtime, 28-22. I'll tell you this, Wicksburg, they got a quarterback that dude's a baller. He's playing with a cast on his right hand. He's left-handed. Wears number 15. He runs the ball like another guy that was left-handed and wore number 15 that you worked one time, Bo. And I'm telling you, he was similar to him, though. I mean, he took the game over at times last night. And Dayville, the score says 28-22, and I'm telling you, that doesn't represent how the game went. Neither defense ever stopped each other. The offense stopped themselves. I mean, Wicksburg got stopped on 2 4th downs in the red zone in the first half, and that kept them at only 7 points. Dayville got down with a chance to take a 21-7 lead right before half and fumbled the snap, and Wicksburg recovered. It kept it a 14-7 game. Dayville got the ball to start second half, went 3 and out. Wicksburg immediately took it, went down, scored, went for 2, took the lead, and didn't really look back. It was 22-14 with 3 minutes to go. Dayville then went on about a minute-and-a-half drive to tie the football game up at 22. Wicksburg then went on a drive themselves and got sacked trying to throw a Hail Mary at the end of the game. So they go to overtime. Dayville gets stopped at the inch-yard line. I mean, I'm telling you, they're reaching the ball out, and his forearm goes down, and they roll it short. Wicksburg gets the ball, has a holding call on the first down, and then still finds a way to score and get in the end zone there in the first overtime. So it's a great football game. A good win for Wicksburg, and both of those teams are going to have their work cut out for them next week as Wicksburg goes to Reeltown and Dayville goes to Thomasville. It's going to be tough matchups for both of those groups, having to get the playoffs started. So, fun game, though, and I'm telling you, Wicksburg, it's going to be tough for Wicksburg to score on Reeltown because of how good Reeltown is, but I'll tell you, that quarterback is going to give them a chance because that he's just a gamer. I mean, he was fun to watch last night. It's a guy that knows how to win. He's a winner. And I want to give him a lot of credit. Mason Burkhart is his name, and I mean he threw it well. And they dropped like 7 passes last night, or his passing numbers could have been fantastic. So he's a very, very good football player, and it was a good win for Wicksburg over Dayville last night. 2A beating a 3A. Anytime that happens, that's big. And then speaking of that, I mean Winterboro getting a win over Childersburg last night as well. It's a tough end of the year for Childersburg. They started out the year very well and kind of just fell apart here at the end of the season, losing to Beulah, losing to Dayville, losing out to Winterboro, and tough end of the season for them. So that's going to do it for us on this week's episode of the Average Joe Sports Talk Saturday morning recap. Should be fun now getting set up for the playoffs, and we'll have all the matchups and everything Tuesday night with our Road to the Blue Map show. So make sure to tune in right here on Facebook or YouTube on the Average Joe Sports Talk accounts. And we'll be back here next Saturday, all 3 of us breaking down all the first round action, and we'll talk about every game, every result, every matchup, and it should be a lot of fun. So for Corey Labounty, Bo Starkey, I'm Caleb Brooks. Again, make sure to tune in Tuesday night, Road to the Blue Map show. And we'll be back here